So excited for what we have next. I'm with John Henry Clevenger, who's the Executive Director of ID3 at the MIT Media Lab, and Christina Farr. I cover data and healthcare for VentureBeat, your host. And our title for this discussion is very relevant given what's been going on in the last few months with the NSA. It's my data versus spy data, the balance of keeping data very relevant and protected. So how do we protect you as consumers? So let's just kind of kick things off by introducing MIT the Media Lab, because not everyone's going to know what it does.
All right. Well, the Media Lab has been around for about 25 years. Started by Nick Conte, and it was, at inception, it was something very unusual at MIT, that it was corporate sponsored research, and it was focused on what going digital could do to media. Over the 25 years, it's become, we have a new building, we have a new director, Joe Ito. It's very interdisciplinary, everything from prosthetics to photonic neuroscience to robotics to the area that I work in is human dynamics, which is machine learning, security, privacy. We're looking at we are developing basically platforms to help people protect and share and monetize their data. A lot of analytics around what we call social computation, analytics around sort of the social graph and what kind of predictions you can make about social behavior, influencers, that kind of thing. Very interdisciplinary. And there's also a venture group that's associated with Media Lab. So a lot of people come to the Media Lab and that started the company. So it's very long.
So we're using the term, data obviously throughout this conference. But the other term that we keep hearing is disruption. And when we were chatting backstage, one of the things that stood out to me is that you said that whole industries are, really ripe for disruption. Can we talk a little bit more about why you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that right now, a lot of the time, I've been involved also besides MIT. I was at Harvard for a number of years looking at sort of the regulatory issues. We started something called the Law Lab. And I think what you're seeing is that how we tend to think about data right now is sort of, certainly from a regulatory view, but even in some of the conversations I hear here, is that data is, if you collect a set of observations, you make inferences about them, you share them. And so the regulatory framework is how do you limit collection, how do you create notification of consent, what are the issues around retention. And I think we've moved into a total data economy where we're really immersed in data. Some people say data is like oil, it's the new oil. I think it's water, and the reason I say it's water is because it's got a flow. And it has to be shared among a lot of different people. If people can't pollute it, they take it out and do something with it, need to return it in its original state. The value of data is going to be able to flow and create, fuel a number of different processes. And so with the advent of sensors, machine learning, this prolific explosion of data, I see sort of like two twin forces coming together. You're going to collect it in a single space. It's very important for people to have control over the data. If they really don't have, and I don't mean ownership, I mean control in some effective way, then they really aren't going to have control over their lives. That combined with machine learning, you're going to get better and better metrics, better predictions about security, reduce frauds. There's real value to be created with that. At the same time, you can get better offers. So you're going to be able to move from sort of low closure rates in office to very high closure rates. So we've done a lot of experiments in mobile data. We data mine phones with students and have amazing ability to make predictions about what people will buy, what app, where they're going to be, when they're going to get sick. I mean, it's a little scary. It's creepy. There's no doubt about it. And so, when you have that much control, there's so much regularity in people's patterns. We're looking at ways in which you can look at data and analyze the creditworthiness of people. We can develop a hash string used to authenticate people into their own business system. So it's a very different world, and yet the regulatory and business model is still locked in the old. So the reason it's so disruptive is that you have a whole set of issues based upon an old notion of data, and now this is exploding. So I just think there's huge discontinuities and disruption.
Earlier you said that one of the industries that you think that is going to go down first is financial services, and that it's the banks that should be concerned.
Yeah, I think that there was an interesting piece piece just yesterday in the Financial Times, written by a banker, so I'm basically saying they're toast unless they deal with the whole digital revolution. And you see this expressed in Bitcoin to me is so symptomatic of what's happening. The fact that you can have a trusted means of making exchanges of value, and you can make transfer payments with virtually no cost, cuts at the business model of banking. And so you're seeing a whole new kind of infrastructure being developed around digital banking that scales, so it has a fraction of the cost and different revenue. It's very hard for big companies, big banks to make those transitions. And there's a fusion of mobile services and banking. And there's a little company that spun out of MIT called Jana that has a way of accessing 3.5 billion mobile accounts, so they can do top-up payments. That scales to 3. So if they can do a personal data store and data account and know your customer, they got a banking system. And the regulations of banking are changing such, it can be mobile. We were just back in Luxembourg. This is an interesting place because they're reinventing themselves around being the country is a cloud platform that can be trusted. Given what's happened in NSA, people are fleeing the U.S. because they have large accounts because they don't trust our regulatory environment in NSA.
So Luxembourg has benefited.
Luxembourg has been benefiting from that. So they have transparent and very advanced regulatory regimes in terms of how to protect and share data, government data, then I think they're going to be very attractive. It's not them, it'll be someone else. There's a whole regulatory global arbitrage.
There's a whole story behind this trip to Luxembourg. So can you explain a little bit about what you were...
Well, I mean, I think that what we're interested in, and there's actually a group here that is a new association that's formed called DATA, which means the Digital Asset Transfer Authority. It's like a trade association.
Good acronym, if I ever heard of it.
It'd be a little weird because you don't know whether you're talking about data with a capital D or not. But the issue there is that you have an explosion in digital currencies, and how do you get them regulated? How do you know your customer, get him underlying? How do you move away from the Silk Road stigma to actually having a new financial structure and use the benefits of digital currencies? And I think there the interest is, how do you set digital asset exchanges? And those are not regulated. So my view is that's going to be a new business model for the web. That's how people can get paid. So you can move from an advertising model, as the data gets better and better. So the advertising is pushing it because they really don't know what you want. Once you start to collect a lot of data about them, you're going to know what they want. You're going to have a better way of authenticating. So there's a sort of virtual cycle there. And then you're going to create exchanges on how to monetize that. And those scale very fast. They're built into the whole financial services industry.
Yeah.
People know how to do it.
So we're talking about data as sort of inherently a good thing as well as being somewhat inevitable, this explosion of data. But, you know, hearing you talk about data asset exchanges and everything that companies are going to know about us, I'm a little bit terrified because we kind of want to run away to Luxembourg. So can we talk through kind of the good and bad of this?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think it is sort of the frame that my phone is a spy.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Google, but perhaps a little. You have a look at the Moto X and you look at the architecture of the phone, and you see how that you have sensors. You have sensors in the phone that actually do natural language recognition, interpretation. They know you have proximity sensors. They're roughly, when we were working with something Project Funk, there were like 32 different sensors in the phone that you could monitor. Well, those now are sort of not visible to you. They're pushed back under, and they go back to Google now. So the answer, well, and so you can have a low power sensor on, and you don't know what it's listening to, and it can recognize who's in the circle, who's in the pin, and what they're doing. Map that into your Gmail accounts, also to your contact list, your search histories. They have, I mean, it makes the NSA look like a bunch of peeping toms. They don't have anything. It's much more sophisticated. But there is value in that. The question is, who appropriates that value? And this is where you have to start to rethink fundamental civic institutions, the extent to which I have a right to it. That data should flow, it should be monetized, but I don't think a company should act as a country or a state. I think that has to be.
Is that what's happening now?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. They're issuing identities. They're issuing identities, they're collecting data on you. That data is being monetized in a way that you don't know. If you don't control the data about yourself, you really are not controlling your life.
And governments just aren't preventing this from happening.
Governments, and they just can't, they keep pace. And so there's a whole change of regulatory issues, and you have to move to this argument about having performance-based regulations rather than tight rules, and having the government set certain criteria. And I argue there should be governance through APIs, basically. We have a set of programs that enforce a set of standards, and they're transparent around that. But it's important to have trusted use of information. I just found the surveillance model of creepiness is not going to help to create the data economy. And I think you can do both. I don't think it's either or. I don't think it's a Hobson's choice at all.
Do you think that, consumers also need to rise up when they see examples of their data integrity being compromised? We were talking again backstage about InBloom, which was a really fascinating case. It was an education nonprofit that was funded through the Gates Foundation.
That's right.
And they were compiling all of the student data and hoping to monetize from it. And parents rose up against this.
Well, I mean, there were a lot of issues with it. I mean, they had a set. They had as a Gates was at South by Southwest, and there was an uproar. But it's a $100 million project, and the intentions are very, very laudable. And they wanted to do data analytics in order to design better criteria for students. But what they're doing was collecting everything on students. And students and the parents, the FERPA regulations, have no control over what kind of data they collected, nor can they see that data. So there's no recourse at all. And they had something what they call super administrators, which was put in recently with the Obama administration in order to push this through. And that actually, what a super administrator can be, actually be a third-party company that has the right to collect the information, and you don't have the right to see what they have. So the kid has problems with school, with their parents. If their parents are divorced, they collect all that information, and then you can get stigmatized for life. You say, well, why are these doors shut? Why am I seeing it? So it was pretty disastrous. And I did a white paper by them on this. I think that, before it was, I think there's solutions to it, but I just think and then they had the guy running it. It was all they were in partners with Murdoch. It was ill-conceived.
So the point is that consumers managed to stop this, and they, it was parents that said, no, this is not okay, lawyers that
But that was just a case of a special school program that was done. I mean, and that was the Gates Foundation. They had some leverage, and parents did revolt against it, but parents don't have a lot of control over student data. So there's a whole new social contract that needs to come out in terms of people being aware of what their data rights are. Now, in this administration, there is a consumer data bill of rights. It's pretty light.
Did anybody know that there was a consumer data bill of rights? Because
I don't know why I asked whether. No, it's pretty thoughtful, but it's not law. So and so there's something called NSTIC, National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, where they talk about trust frameworks. There's also in the EU, there's a data bill, there's a human rights data bill. But what happens is like the Russian Congress bill of rights. It's a name, but it's not enforceable. And so it sounds good. I mean, so actually what we're trying to do is build a system, an open source platform that actually enforces expresses. And that's where it only has teeth, because you've got to implement it not only in statutory ways that don't think it works, but you're going to have self-governing pathways.
So if you're, here in this audience and you're doing big data, or you're just collecting a lot of data, do you have any advice, actionable advice for the right and the wrong ways to collect this data?
Well, I think there's the big data rush, the gold rush. I think that there, and you can see that in the sense, but I think the sensor data is extremely powerful, and all the GPS, everything. But I think at some point you've got to understand that there has to be some kind of consent, and you can't move into the creepy zone. There has to be some developing a set of principles that people abide by as transparent, accountable use of that data.
So we have about time for one question, maybe two. It's a quick one. Yeah.
I'd like to get your perspective on our health information, both the warrant and also the meeting coming available online. What does that mean?
He's-
So
We
those
were
are
talking
very-
about this during the meeting as well.
Well, I mean, if you have your genetic, your genomic information available. I mean, I'm in 23, we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I think we're in uncharted territories here. In terms of, I mean, the issue is, yeah, the old idea was that there were harms that would come in sharing things that shouldn't be shared. I think there are great harms in not having the flow of data. And so you need to have the flow of data. And that's sort of the new ways of thinking about data. But I also think through things like zero knowledge proofs and there are various ways which you can aggregate, anonymize, and analyze data without necessarily having it be personally identified. You can also, we build things like trust frameworks. So there are ways in which people are authenticated into a large network that you can hold them accountable for how they treat the data. And that's part of the social contract of being a network. It's more of a common law notion than a statutory notion. And set of conventions and norms that are governing in a particular group. So for genomic, I mean, there's just so much powerfully identifying information that can be good and abused. And I think so it's really important to get this right.
We do have scientists' genome, which is one law we do have to protect you against genetic discrimination. But those laws are only the U.S. and in other countries. So it's a very interesting case from a privacy of data and regulation. One more.
You said initially that people must have control over their data to qualify that as not ownership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you get in a property model, and then the question is who really owns it, who originated it. So you have companies that have data. So a lot of this, I write them a copy of my data. There's something that data is built jointly with people. So once you start getting into ownership issues and retention, then that creates, I think, a lot of legal complication. There's a notion of really having data rights, right claims to data. There's a concept called common pool resources developed by Eleanor Ostrom, the Nobel laureate. And it's sort of like, how do you manage a commons, and how do you able to share data in a way that people have different rights with, but they don't claim ownership. I think that's probably a better legal model than the
Well, great. We're
Thank you.
just about out of time. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you.